On this channel, we like to share positive stories about rheumatoid arthritis and other inflammatory arthritis conditions and inspire you to understand and appreciate how much can be done naturally with these conditions to be able to dramatically improve your health and get your symptoms under control. Today, my guest is Diana, and she has a story of a dramatic reversal of rheumatoid arthritis symptoms. And she's going to walk us through this journey of hers and how she's now living symptom-free for 5 years after using lifestyle changes to overcome her severe rheumatoid arthritis symptoms. Diana, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Let's do a commercial here, before and after. Just describe a moment in time where you were at your worst, and then describe now what's it like by comparison.
So I guess in terms of the moment in time, I still remember the exact date. It was the 3rd of February, 6 years ago. I just landed my dream job and I was sitting at my desk and I went from having sort of some niggling pain to just pain everywhere in my body, just was in so much pain. And the events that sort of preceded that were me trying to juggle this dream job, but being in pain on a scale of out of 10 and just crying, in the bathroom at lunch and crying every time I needed to go to the bathroom. It was just so bad. And I sort of didn't know what to do, couldn't almost see a way out. I couldn't almost comprehend living, in that amount of pain. And then I guess fast forward sort of to today, living I don't think about rheumatoid arthritis. I am completely pain-free. It doesn't affect my life in any way. So, feel very sort of lucky to have found the program and to be able to live a completely normal life. I often just don't even think about it.
People are going to be wondering, how on earth did you do this? There's a lot of questions, of course, to go through here. First of all, were you diagnosed with officially rheumatoid arthritis to eliminate the skeptics which think it might have been reactive arthritis or something else?
No, so yes, I did receive. I received a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis from my GP and from 2 rheumatologists. I was actually diagnosed 4 years, so 10 years ago, with palindromic rheumatism, which is a rare form of rheumatoid arthritis where you have these episodes of joint pain, and that travels to different sort of limbs or different joints. And I was always sort of told that, being a female and the age I was at, generally the pattern they see is that you develop rheumatoid arthritis, but let's just monitor it and see what happens. And the episodes became, they went from me having an episode, say, every 2 to 3 months to every 2 to 3 weeks. So I knew something was, happening, and went from sort of, yes, having this sort of niggling pain that traveled to literally on this 3rd of February, pain everywhere. I couldn't move. I still remember, I don't know why, my right calf just blew up. And I remember being like, I don't know how I'm going to move my leg. And I was at work. And the next day I got into my GP and he sort of ran a heap of blood tests and that. And he said, look, your body has formed rheumatoid arthritis. And then because it was so bad, I felt like there was glass in my feet. I felt like I couldn't bend my feet. He booked me an emergency appointment at a rheumatologist with all my blood tests, and they sort of confirmed the diagnosis also.
And so you went to see your first rheumatologist. You mentioned that you saw 2 rheumatologists.
Yeah.
Was that for a second opinion? And what did both of them recommend for you in terms of treatment?
Sure. So the first rheumatologist, I had been on prednisolone when my GP diagnosed me, but I was having a lot of issues with my heart. Like I'd sort of wake up overnight and it would be racing, and then it would sort of skip and just like skip a beat, and it was jump. My heart was sort of jumping. So they took me off that. But this first rheumatologist, she told me, I still remember, she said, "When are you in the most amount of pain?" And sorry if this is oversharing, but I said, "After I go to the bathroom." And she goes, "Oh, there's no connection to what you eat and rheumatoid arthritis." So she's like, I'll just disregard that. And she wanted to put me on methotrexate and back on prednisolone. And that's where she wanted to start. And then she sort of said there would be sort of further drugs that would be, or further medication would be looking at. And I just sort of walked away and said no. We had a family friend who'd also had rheumatoid arthritis, hadn't used diet, but was one of those sorts of people that he sort of always did a lot of research in anyone he was sort of doctors or speaking to, and always wanted the best. So he sort of recommended a rheumatologist in Melbourne who I got put on a wait list for 5 months to see. And so, I eventually was also able to see him.
I'm searching for the name. Was it the rheumatologist who likes to use a lot of hypnotherapy and stuff like that, sort of a natural base?
And I think he's retired now. His name's Stephen Hall. But he was just, he was very, at this stage I was on the Paddison program. He was very like, whatever you're doing, because by this stage it had been like 5 months. He was like, your rheumatoid factor's coming down. Like he was like, whatever you're doing, I have no issue with. And I sort of said to him, look, I have no interest in going on methotrexate and all these sort of other medications. And he sort of agreed. And he was like, you steer the ship. It's your body. I'd like to start you on Plaquenil, which is an anti-malaria medication. We don't see a lot of side effects. Because I was so also, worried about the work I'd done with this program and restoring my like good gut bacteria in my stomach. And I think at the time I was using your forum a lot to sort of piece together answers and ask questions. And I think someone had said like Plaquenil was sort of less of a gut disruptor, and often sort of a safer option, I then went on Plaquenil for a year, and he actually said to me, if you stop having any pain for say 8 weeks, he was like, you're welcome to stop it. So I think Plaquenil for a year.
Okay. So you kind of already mentioned that you started doing the Paddison program, which is a good segue for us to talk about that. You'd done 5 months of that between rheumatologist A and rheumatologist B. When you got to rheumatologist B, Stephen Hall, you had already dropped your symptoms. Now, you mentioned rheumatoid factor. Are you literally meaning rheumatoid factor or just inflammatory markers like CRP?
So my CRP and ESR had come down considerably, and my rheumatoid factor had dropped, because I think because of this palindromic rheumatism, I was sort of having blood tests, say, twice a year to monitor the inflammation markers and the rheumatoid factor, and they just literally over, say, a 5-year period went like this. So when I initially had those first blood tests when I was diagnosed by my GP, he said he'd never seen such a severe case in a sort of a female my age. And then what my GP then organised for me once a month to have sort of blood tests done. And Stephen Hall just noticed that these sort of 3 key markers, or what he deemed as key markers, were coming down. But it was, I know you can be stereonegative, but from just how you feel yourself, like I knew things were, I had confidence that my blood tests would show that things were improving.
Yeah, you can tell, can't you? I used to be able to predict at one point during about a 4-month period. I predicted consecutive blood test results to within a decimal place
Oh,
based on
wow.
my own symptoms and the frequency of which I was getting my blood work tested, which was monthly for methotrexate. And
Yeah.
so I'd go in and I'd come home and I'd say to my wife, Melissa, I'd say, I think I'm like a 3.4. And it'd come back and it was like 3.3. And I'm like, that's how good I got at guessing my
Yeah.
blood inflammatory markers, because you notice that your hands are doing better with their closing and the knee
Yeah.
swelling goes down. Where were the main areas for you that were most vulnerable and affected?
So my feet, I can't actually explain what it was like. It was like I'd have these bouts where I felt like I was walking on glass. It was just absolutely terrifying. Elbows, both like left and right, were very much affected. Right knee was for 6 months. That was constant. And it's funny, I would have traveling pain in my hands, but still today I get comments, "Oh, you've got really messy handwriting." And I know I don't have any symptoms in that, but I am kind of convinced that almost my how I hold a pen and that, I don't know, it's almost like maybe there's some slight damage in my hands. There's no physical damage. Like, it's funny, I was with a girlfriend the other night and her mum, and I could see her mum's hands, they've been affected. Like, I've got no sort of um, physical, like damage that you could see, but I definitely noticed in my hand sort of a bit, yeah, find it hard to write a bit. And it's not, I don't find it hard to write. It's just more my handwriting is slightly messy.
If
Yeah.
that were the only negative outcome for everyone, it'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you go back and see Dr. Hall and get his feedback after you managed to, reduce symptoms further? And did you come off the Plaquenil entirely? And did you do that by yourself, as he said you could?
So yes, he then monitored me for 2 years just on a 6 monthly basis. And it would literally be like his rooms would organize blood tests, the week prior. I'd go in and he'd review them. Um, and he'd just literally do like a full body examine to sort of make sure, I don't know, that he thought my joints were okay. He never actually suggested any sort of x-rays or scans. Um, and yes, I did come off the Plaquenil myself, and he was fine with that. But I haven't seen him in 4 years. I haven't needed to. And he said to me, like, your body. Like, I was saying to my mum the other day, the pain of rheumatoid arthritis is just, it's like nothing you've ever experienced. And it's, to me, how it was for me was quite a specific pain. So I know it's this, that dull sort of, so I know, like, if that was to come back, I would know kind of what to do and whether or not I would want to go see him. But um, I haven't experienced any pain, so I'm sort of not in contact with him, or haven't been to see him for the last 4 years.
Yeah, amazing. How interested or bemused or fascinated was he in the results that you'd achieved with your lifestyle changes?
He was very interested. He was why he sort of resonated with me as a rheumatologist and as a doctor was he seemed quite open. In some ways, he didn't pry too much. Like, he was sort of like, whatever you're doing, it's working, so just keep going. He was like, you do what you want. He was, in a way, I feel like you could pin him as very much like a doctor's doctor, but I think he was kind of turning the page and understanding that, a lot of people were looking for more answers and trying to understand the connection of diet and, whether or not that would affect um, sort of how that affects rheumatoid arthritis. So he was very open-minded. I found him interesting too because he was sort of constantly traveling in between like the UK and doing a lot of research and study. And he was sort of very well informed, even if it was, I guess a different approach. A more sort of Western medicine approach. He was sort of always interesting to talk to. And I would tell him things like, I've been taking potassium for my feet and I find quite an instant relief in that. And he was like, that's really interesting. And he'd write sort of notes and stuff. Whereas, that first rheumatologist I saw, she was very much like, this is what we do. This is how we treat it. She was like, you're going to be having infusions, in hospital for a very long time. It was just, she was just quite doom and gloom, whereas he was much more like collaborative.
Mm.
Yeah.
My rheumatologist, the same. There's, I think, a clue there for a lot of people that when you've got a medical professional who is neutral or just open-minded, and I love how he described that, you're in control, that you're the CEO of your health. I forget the phrase, but basically you're the boss. And I tell
Yeah.
people this all the time. Like if I'm coaching someone, I say, you're still the boss. Like I'm serving you to get well. Your doctor serves you to get well. You are in control here. We can guide you, etc. And I love that. And my, relationship with my rheumatologist, who I'm on a sort of at a distance with, similar to yourself with yours, is, like he always curious, taking notes, interested. It was never a cup already full mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Which
I think,
it's funny because when I first went to my GP, I think and I know he was a GP, not a specialist, but it felt very much like there was no hope. You're going to have to live with this for the rest of your life. This is a really serious medical issue. And here's a cocktail of pain medication. And I just remember being like, I can't live like this. And and that first rheumatologist was a bit like that, whereas Stephen Hall was kind of like, let's work together. Let's figure this out. It's your body, you steer the ship. So I didn't feel backed into a corner.
yeah, it's very empowering. People remember things that their rheumatologist has told them 20 years ago. I've got people saying to me, oh, I'm afraid to do that because my rheumatologist said I couldn't do that. When was that? 2001? Was what? Okay. And they're talking about something. Yeah. So let's now talk about what you did, because some people who are new to this, who haven't even heard of that program, they're going to say, well, what is that? So I just want you to talk openly about what pathway did you go through? Obviously, there's a heavy emphasis on diet, but there's so much more to it. What did you go through? And just explain to us in detail how you went about your changes, what experiences, both up and down, you had, and everything that you can divulge, please.
Sure. So I guess I still remember very clearly. So my family's always, I guess, been quite into health. My mum brought us up and we saw naturopaths, and she always had us taking like zinc and vitamin C. And so my family, I guess, didn't sort of eat gluten, but we ate meat and we never had sugar. So we all, I guess, I thought we had a very sort of healthy diet. And the way I guess I was eating when all of this came about is I was sort of gluten-free and sugar-free, but eating meat and have oils and eating out a lot and stuff like that. So I still remember when this all sort of came about, the week, so it happened on like a Monday when the pain just came on like a freight train. And that weekend I didn't leave my house and I did so much research because I'd been to see my GP. He was like, you're going to live like this for the rest of your life. And I was like, I just can't live like this. Did a lot of research and found sort of like gluten-free and stuff. And I was like, I'm already doing that. And I'm in so much pain. So I actually don't remember how, but I found your program and it kind of sparked interest in me, your story in terms of the fact that you'd had it. So you understood. And also, for all the skeptics out there, your sort of science background really resonated with me. And because I'd listened, I think, to a few TED Talks on, you know, that the lady in, I think, Chicago with MS, the
Oh,
Walls
yeah.
Protocol, or
Yeah.
Terry Wall,
Terry
which
Wall.
did kind of diet. But, you know, similar story in the way that she had sort of a science background, and that's how she approached. So it sort of resonated with me, I guess, because it felt sort of like the Paddison program provided a lot of answers, but it also was science backed. So on that Monday, I went back to work and I started like the juice cleanse for 2 days. I didn't notice like a huge shift in my pain. And I remember sort of talking about the forum, and I remember talking to you, Clint, at the time, and you were like, look, your body's just morphed into rheumatoid arthritis. It can be hard to get it under control, to stick with it. So I did the base. Sorry, I haven't looked at any of the documents for a while. So if any of my terminology is not correct, but I did like the base diet for around 2 months, 2 to 3 months. I didn't eat out. I was doing, I found Bikram yoga with just worked too hard for me to manage. So I was doing these 40-minute, 3 to 4 times a week, like a hot yoga class. And then on the days I wasn't doing that, I was doing saunas. So constantly making sure I was sort of perspiring, because I would also notice for me, if I was in a sauna, the pain would, I mean, it wouldn't go, but it would dial down. So I would get some relief. So I was sort of doing, the yoga, saunas, the supplementation that was sort of recommended in the program. So, you know, like the probiotics and digestive enzymes, and was doing sort of the base diet for around the first 3 months. I lost a lot of weight, but then I sort of increased what I was eating. I think looking back on that time, I sent myself a bit insane. Like, I wish I could have just sat back, relaxed a bit, and not known I was doing everything that I could to, like, just my mindset. I think I was so scared that my work was going to find out, and it was my dream job, and I was just trying to juggle everything. But I would say around the 4 to 5 month mark of doing the sort of program, you and I had a call. And things really shifted for me after that, because you sort of said, look, you're doing all the right things. I think you actually need to calm down the nervous system, have some peace of mind that, you know, this will get better. And that you are kind of doing the right thing. And that sort of really resonated with me and gave me some confidence, because I was also doing like acupuncture, and I was just doing all this stuff, which was just exhausting, trying to juggle this all with work. So really after that, I just honed in on making sure I was perspiring. So if the days I couldn't get to a sauna or anything, I was doing sort of hot baths, like an Epsom bath, making sure I was walking every day and that my diet was sort of clean as possible. So yeah, I did baseline diet for the first sort of 3 months, and then slowly added in sort of, I followed like to a T. There was no cheating, the sort of program in terms of how you'd suggest reincorporating foods. I went to overseas 4 months into the program, and I remember reading a lot on the forum of how people sort of approach that, and I sort of decided to go buy a rice cooker, which I traveled with. And I was actually in hotels, and I would literally eat like quinoa and steamed vegetables. I went to Europe for 3 weeks, and I ate steamed. I would go down to breakfast and have like orange juice and bananas and just fresh fruit. I can't even remember what I did for lunch, but for dinner every night I would just have like steamed vegetables and quinoa in my room. So I think for me there was almost like milestones in all of this. I think finding the program, then that sort of mark where you and I connected on the phone really helped me. And then funnily enough, seeing Stephen Hall, that rheumatologist, gave me a lot of confidence too. I think just knowing that what I was doing from a blood test perspective, and that was working, and things literally just went like this, like up and up and up for me after that. So I didn't eat out for 8 months, and just followed to a T this program. I didn't stray. I didn't, you know, yeah. But I guess, friends and family were like, "How are you doing this?" And I was like, "Well, it's working." And I just also didn't see another way. Like I couldn't go back to the amount of pain I was in and the way I was living. It just wasn't sort of, to me, it was a means to an end. Just sort of to improve my health and to be pain free. And the level of pain I was in, like, I don't know how anyone would live like that. So to me, just, I guess the way I'm wired is I want answers, I want to know why, and I want to try everything. So to me, it was like, why wouldn't I do this? I got a lot of like, strange looks and questions over what I was eating that, but I just didn't care.
I love it.
It just didn't bother me.
I love it.
Yeah,
So you kind of have to have this all or nothing mentality to be able to get through this, don't you?
I think that and I'm not trying to make it too serious, but I do think some people don't understand almost like the dedication, that is needed. Like, I remember reading on the forum at times, people would be like, "Oh, I'm back from my trip in Thailand. I ate out 3 meals a day and there was oils and that, and I'm in so much pain again." And, I don't mean this in a judgmental way, but that's just not how I approached it. I took it very seriously, and I definitely think that I maybe could have progressed faster if I was a bit calmer. I was just in, I think, such a spin of being so anxious and almost not knowing what to do. I wish I just had, though, calm down and trust the process a bit, because definitely once I did, things sort of moved a lot faster. Like, in terms of my digestion seemed to be a lot better. I was able to tolerate some other foods, and but yeah, you need it. I mean, it takes dedication, but the reward is just, you know, yeah, outweighs, having a pizza on a Sunday night.
How are you now with regards to diversity? Can you eat at, say, an Indian restaurant or a Mexican restaurant and have a bean burrito? How are you now with regards to resilience?
Yeah, so I guess I would say I live a completely normal life in terms of eating out. I've definitely been found ways to kind of navigate, or work. My auntie says she's never seen someone work a menu like me. So, I mean, I don't eat any meat. I don't have dairy. I always try to choose sort of a low oil option if I'm eating out. I rarely have some sort of wild fish. Um, I mean, I don't find it that hard because I kind of know, what to order, and where to go. But I mean, I live a very busy life. I run my own business, so generally Monday to Friday, I cook all my own meals. I'm out maybe once a week, and I've got almost like where I know I can go. But
Mhm.
if I was at a dinner recently and they served some meat and it was either not eat or, I mean, I ate a tiny bit of it. It was not appealing to me, but, it didn't sort of throw me off course or anything.
Yeah.
I definitely think for me, I've got to, have that structure of 90% or 99.5% of the time sticking to what I know works. But I've definitely relaxed a lot in terms of if I'm at an event, and I mean, I always try to plan, and all my friends and family know how I eat, but sometimes you just have to, that's life a bit, you know.
How would your mum describe what you went through in her terms to, say, one of her friends?
Well, to be honest, I was in such a state. She used to come into the city like 3 times a week and have lunch with me because I'd just sit there. I mean, I wasn't having lunch. Oh, I'd have like a Tupperware container, but we'd meet at a cafe and I'd just sit there and cry. She just said it was her worst nightmare, just watching me go through this. Yeah, she just said you can't comprehend watching a child go through. I think I think my parents didn't know what to do, but they also were really proud of me for sort of being very proactive in finding this program and really sticking to it. But my mum has told me multiple times it was just torture to watch. Like I'd come home from work and I'd just bawl for hours, and she'd meet me in the city and I'd just be like crying for an hour, and I was just, she just has said it was just absolute torture.
Mm. Yeah, it's not a question I've ever asked before, but now with kids who are getting along, Angelina's 10 and I've got an 8 and a 6-year-old, you start to think about it from a different perspective. It used to all be for me, just me and my wife just trying to survive.
Yeah.
And did you have a relationship at the time throughout this process?
No. And I don't know how I would have managed with that. Yeah. No.
Yeah, you were traveling too, right? I remember from a brief chat before. Yeah, where we?
Yeah, so I was in Melbourne, but I was head of like supply chain for a big apparel label. So I was traveling a lot. Yeah, like I was in Asia 5 to 6 times a year, interstate once a fortnight. Yeah, it's a lot to juggle.
Mm.
Yeah.
If you met someone next to them on a plane, they're traveling on a domestic flight, you've got an hour together, and they tell you have rheumatoid, before the advice that you would give them, before you never see each other again, I'm curious, what level of confidence would you have if they paid you like $1 million that you could turn their life around based on what you now know about this disease?
Oh, I have 100% confidence that this program works, and it works for anyone that applies themselves to and tries it. I remember having a conversation with you at the time of, years ago, that there were a lot of people on the forum that were like, oh, this, I'm finding this isn't working or that. And then we sort of had conversations, well, yes, they're not really sticking to the so I have complete confidence that it's funny though, I sing your praises and I sing the program's praises, but I have almost weirdly become a bit protective because, as you and I have discussed, you've got to be open and you have to be interested. And like even the other day, my dad was talking to a friend who's got severe rheumatoid arthritis, and dad's like, "Oh, you should talk to Diana," blah blah, and mum's like, they're not going to they're not going to listen. So as much as I would, I have complete confidence and I know this program works and I know it works for anyone who applies themselves to it, I have kind of become a bit more protective in terms of who I spend the time going through with it because, yeah, you've got to be open. Like I know quite a few people with rheumatoid arthritis and I've tried to talk to them and their eyes just sort of glaze over.
Mm.
So, yeah, I have complete confidence.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've not asked that question before either. The reason I asked you that question
Yeah.
is because you've just described the level of determination where you will go as far as it takes to get well. And
Yeah.
that's what I see and have seen in the past of myself. And so when you know that you personally can go there where the days are very dark and the thoughts are very, very awful in your mind and you can't see a way out, and yet you get out of that,
Yeah.
you believe that if you can go to that literally below rock bottom and survive, that someone else can get out of their situation. You know they can with
Yeah.
the right level of commitment and determination and, of course, the right strategies and tactics and all of this stuff. But I think that's been valuable for me to hear from you and sense that from you,
Yeah.
because I believe that too. Anyone that I meet with this condition, I believe that it's the tip of the iceberg currently as to how they're living their life compared to the quality of the life they could be leading. It's a
Gotcha.
7 or 9% quality of life that they currently have normally, and that the bulk of their existence is below the surface, sitting there ready to be unleashed. The health, the joy, the vibrancy, the confidence, the looking forward to the future. And I really believe that everyone's just scratching the surface.
Yeah. I mean, looking back on that time, as I've said, I wish I had approached it with a sort of that I was a lot calmer. I think also I wish I'd sort of just enjoyed it a bit. You know, I was learning a lot, not meeting, but there was all these amazing people on the forum. And it just was like, in looking back, it was like an amazing thing to do. So I wish I hadn't approached it with such a doom and gloom, like that it was like, I wish I had breathed and been like, I found this, I've connected with all these amazing people who understand, and everything will be okay. Because it is, it's having that forum to be able to speak to people and ask questions, and that it's incredible. And I remember at the time I think she was maybe Swedish, or there was a girl who lived in London, and she made this sort of huge Instagram page on her sort of how she was progressing. And I feel like she turned it into quite a positive, it was quite a positive sort of thing that she did. Whereas for me, I wish I had trusted and enjoyed the process more.
Interesting, isn't it?
One other thing I was going to say is my dad was diagnosed last December with a rare form of cancer. And I did approach this in a similar way, and I found someone in Sydney that had sort of treated this cancer holistically, and but also under the guidance of a oncologist. And he's actually written a book, and he and I connected, and he did say to me when we last spoke, he said, "You're the 3%." And I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" He said, "You're wired to ask all these questions and want to know." He said, "A lot of people just, I sort of also wonder too if it's a certain type that's sort of attracted to the program, because, I've got a very good friend who's got very severe Crohn's disease, and he got diagnosed, and he takes methotrexate and a whole lot of other drugs, and he has no interest in looking at diet and that, anytime him and I ever talk to him, he's like, "No, that's just what the doctors have told me." Whereas I guess that's just not how I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've never understood kind of what the difference is between those who get it and those who don't get it.
Yeah.
And way back, one of our first podcasts we ever did, I interviewed a guy called Danny, and he was your era. He was maybe
Oh,
just before you. You might have seen
yeah.
him floating in and out at that time. He'd already got well. He was back playing the guitar and everything. And so he was like, they had to carry him to the hospital.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. And then anyway, so after 12 months, we had him off all his meds. He was as good as gold, like absolutely perfect. And I did 2 interviews with him, and his whole theme is it's about taking self-responsibility. And he
Yeah,
says that the hardest thing is to accept that it falls on your shoulders. And people
oh,
don't want that. They think it's the doctor's responsibility to provide the answers, but ultimately to accept responsibility that something in our past has contributed to the onset of the disease, maybe subconsciously, like we didn't know the way we were living our lifestyle was making us vulnerable. But then the acceptance and the responsibility that our actions now are going to dictate how our future is going to be. That's heavy. That's heavy on the shoulders. People don't want that.
yeah. No, of course. Yeah. But it's also exciting to know that you can kind of, master of your own destiny. Like, to me, that excites me. I don't want to sort of be sit and spat out a whole lot of information yeah, it's, I definitely have learned through all of this, though. It very much is kind of how you think or how you don't. And there's a lot of people who are just not open, and to me, I guess, even if I wasn't maybe open to a more alternative or natural approach, I would still want to know, like, I still am just inquisitive. I'd want to know, like, yeah, the sort of science behind it and the success rate and stuff like that.
I used to think that if I could get this under control, that then I could do anything
Yeah.
because nothing prior to this, I'd done an honors degree in laser physics and I thought that's going to be definitely the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. And then this just blew that out of the water. Trying to get well from this, it was just like year after year after year of misery, right? What has this experience that you went through now provided in terms of value or empowerment or confidence or something entirely different that makes you a better person?
Oh, gosh. Um, I think that it definitely, going through something like this puts a lot of things into perspective. Like, I definitely think, with small things in life, I sort of don't get worked up over it because I'm sort of happy to be pain free and living sort of the life I always wanted. And then I think that, I mean, I don't really do this for sort of friends and that, it's more family. It's given me, I guess, the skill set to read blood tests. And my mum was diagnosed with something with her thyroid, 18 months ago, and we looked at that from a diet perspective, and it's all rectified and she's medication free. And so I guess my family would maybe say from a medical perspective, it's given me some skill sets there. But not, I mean, have no, like training or anything. But, if nowadays, if someone presents something to me medically, I think I know the questions to ask. I know where to look in terms of finding some other answers yeah. But so, yeah, I would say just not sort of sweating the small stuff, and then just the way I approach, I guess, if anyone's been unwell in my family. Yeah.
I like those. And what about from the point of view of like when there's a business challenge? And one of the last things I'll ask you is about your business and so on. When it comes to, say, problems that present themselves,
Yeah.
do you think you tap into a deeper reservoir of self resilience or deeper roots of I can overcome problems because of what I've been through?
Well, yes, I think I am very resilient. So I think that I kind of have a mentality I can overcome anything, but also I don't really see problems. And maybe that's not a great thing, but I don't really view something as a problem. I am looking at a solution. So I don't like, even one of my clients, if I ever say to her something, she'll be like, yeah, but that. No, I'm like, no, 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 we don't think like that. This is how we'll solve. So um, I think I've got a lot of resilience, but also I don't really see problems.
I love it. The
Yeah.
whole it's either a success or it's a lesson kind of
Yeah.
mentality.
Well, that, but also when you've been through something like this and you've got yourself out of it, I do feel like you can do anything a bit. So to me, like, where a lot of people just see these sort of small hurdles or problems, I don't see things like that, I guess.
It's a beautiful sort of mindset to have, especially if it's kind of subconscious. You're not really working at that. It's just how you view life. I think
Yeah.
that's wonderful. I'd like to, develop a little bit more of those skills as well.
Yeah.
So you have a business now. You mentioned before that you're working a dream job. We
Yeah.
don't need to get into something that's not as relevant for our audience, but
Sure.
um, what's it like? Running your own business, and is your business of interest to anyone in our community that you could offer services to, or is it something completely unrelated?
It's unrelated. I help scale consumer-based brands. So I get bought into sort of like apparel labels and homewares and that to help sort of fix issues in the businesses and then help scale them. So I'm not sure how much that relates to Paddison program. But yeah, no, I love having, I guess, being sort of in charge of the structure of my week and days. And I work across a lot of different businesses, which I love because I feel like I'm learning, new sort of skills and sort of things every day. Um, And I think going through what I've been through has just given me a lot of confidence to do this. And also, yeah, I just want, I guess, you look, owning, running your own business isn't for everyone, but I just feel like I wanted more out of life than sort of working for someone and working incredibly long hours. And I sort of wanted to almost do that for myself.
Mm. Amazing.
Yeah.
Fantastic. It's all
Yeah.
fallen into place the way that you wanted it to. You've
Yeah.
gone from dream job to even better, which is run your own company and help people probably who are doing what you used to consider your dream job. And now you're advising companies and helping these big brands, which is really, really cool. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing and appreciate the sort of, the insights that you've given and all of the details of the journey. And I think what comes across is how big of a struggle it was and how much you stuck with it.
Yeah.
And that when you're able to realize, I am doing everything that I need to be doing, your nervous system allowed that transition from flight or flight into kind of rest, digest. This helped to finally balance the microbiome a little further. You're able to come down and get off that Plaquenil, get your microbiome sorted, and now build such tolerance that you can eat out at restaurants, symptom-free, and have also some other things here and there, and just doing fantastically for years and years now, 5 years. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad we connected, Diana, and I really appreciate you sharing.
Thank you. One last thing I will say that I guess helped me the most too, because I feel like sometimes I listen to podcasts and I'm like, but how did they do it? I would definitely also say if you are part of the forum, sort of ask a lot of questions. There's incredible wealth of knowledge of people on these forums. And I remember even one day my feet were so bad and I was like, I don't know what to do. And someone was like, try potassium. And then I think Clint, you chimed in and was like, try it. And I was like, wow, I've got so I would also just say ask as many questions because the more you ask, the more you'll learn.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so that particular forum is now bundled into our 6-month breakthrough coaching. So if people are interested, we have built a huge infrastructure of support, support through an MD, as well as physical therapy and everything. We've got basically an online health and wellness center that extends over 6 months to get people well so that they don't have to stress on their own. And that's the way we're shifting our business. So thank
Yeah.
you. It's amazing. Thanks so much, Diana. And we'll continue to ponder on what you've shared. And congratulations again.
Sure. Thank you so much.